Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome back to Mr. Herring's Social Studies, fifth grade. Today's October 19th, Wednesday, 2022, and we are wrapping up our Unit 2 Exploration and Colonization unit with the instruction of the Middle Passage. Now, we talked a little bit about this in the last couple of days. Today, we're just going to be completing a graphic organizer to help us remember the important components of the triangular trade route and how the Middle Passage fit into that particular item. So our entry today was 1019, of course. The title is Middle Passage, and these notes will go in page 41. If you're at home, of course, if you go to my Schoology course and the online journal, you will find the notes page there that you're welcome to either print out on your own and put into your journal, or we can do this when you get back to school if need be. All right, so what do you say we go ahead and get started? Let's talk about the triangular trade route and how it pertains to the Middle Passage. Our essential question today is, what did each of the three continents have to offer the other, and what were the needs of the three continents that made the triangular trade route so successful? How did this influence the Middle Passage? There should be a question mark there. All right, so if you look at the diagram or the graphic organizer that we have, you can see this triangular trade route here. The triangular trade route, like I said, involved three countries. You have Europe, which is England. You have Africa, of course, and you have the Americas. Now, North America, of course, but it all really starts in the West Indies. Of course, we're San Salvador and the Bahamas, where Columbus first lands, years ago. But they all needed something from each other. Everybody needed something from each other. England, of course, England wanted sugarcane, raw cotton, rum, tobacco, and other raw materials. They needed these things so that they could produce finished goods that in turn they could turn around and sell them back to the colonies from which they came. That's very important to remember. England is a very old country. It's been around for a really, really long time. And their raw materials are nearly depleted on their island, on their continent, and their island, their country. And so they need these things in order to create those finished goods. The things that they have, which helps them, is they have cigars, they have cigarettes, they have cloth, they have clothing, they have guns, they have weapons, they have iron and steel. Now, a lot of these things, cigars, cigarettes, cloth, clothing, a lot of that comes from these raw materials up here that they want, that they actually get from the Americas. It's kind of it's a cycle, right? And this cycle just continues. But these are things that England has to offer others. Of course, Africa wants some things too. Africa wants those cigars. They want those cigarettes. They want that cloth. They definitely want the guns and the weapons that England can provide. And they want the iron and steel so that they can make the things that they need as well, because they don't have these things on their continent. And so this is a good partnership, okay? The one thing that Africa has, which eventually comes to surface that the Americas really need more than anything, are gold, ivory, spices, wood, and the most important are these right here, slaves. Now, as we talked about yesterday and the day before, the creation of these plantations demanded a lot of labor. And once the indentured servitude ended, once those contracts began to expire, the Americas, the plantation owners, they need to find that inexpensive labor somewhere. And that labor comes in the form of slavery. So Africa has a great deal of slaves to provide. And of course, the Americas, the North America, and the West Indies, they need the slaves. They need the slaves for all of the labor that they have. They have to have this labor fulfilled, and slavery is the absolute cheapest way to do that. And as we said yesterday, those slaves start to take um, this route right here from Africa to the West Indies, and that is called the Middle Passage, which is an absolute brutal trip for the slaves. And we talked about it in more detail yesterday, but it was a terrible trip for the slave. Months in the cargo hold of a boat, sometimes stacked and crammed into the boat, little to eat, no conveniences, just a terrible passage. Along with West Indies needing slaves, North America itself, the things that they begin to do, North America and the West Indies, they have sugarcane, they have silk, they have the raw cotton, they have the rum, they have tobacco plants, they have whale oil, another one of those dangerous trades that the North American colonists take on. And of course, they have the indigo plant, which gives us the dyes needed for all those pretty dresses that England wants. So as you can see, we have a very unique cycle. The Americas provide raw materials to Europe. Europe takes those raw materials and trades them with Africa to get to the slaves. The slaves then go to the Americas to start the cycle all over again. And this just continues and continues and continues. So the way the Middle Passage works, the slave trade begins in West Africa, a place called Ghana, is over here in West Africa. The tribes begin to capture each other. That's their way of getting rid of one another, solving their tribal conflicts. They trade those African slaves to the white captains from the European countries. They put them on boats, and then they take this horrific thing called the Middle Passage across the Atlantic Ocean that lasts, like I said, months. They land in the West Indies eventually, and then they make their trip into the North American continent, where they are bought, sold, traded to suffice the labor needs of the North American continent because of the incredibly large plantation industry. Okay, and so that, in a nutshell, wraps up the triangular trade route with the Middle Passage, which is very important to remember. The key thing to remember about that Middle Passage is that it is very difficult. I once heard someone make the remark that a slave was lucky if they were able to survive the Middle Passage because it was so awful. Although I don't know that you call it lucky to be alive, but you end up in a life of slavery. So take that as you will. All right, so now that you're done, I believe that you are prepared for this end of unit test. Please practice quizzes to prepare yourself for that test. And I can't wait to see you back in class. Have a wonderful afternoon or rest of your day, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye, boys and girls.